Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I'm Tina Jha. You're watching Perspective. Members cutting across party lines bid farewell to Vice President M Venkaiah Naidu on Monday in Rajya Sabha, lauding his role as its chairman. Hailing Naidu's role in the Rajya Sabha, Prime Minister Modi noted that he had the fortune to work closely with him, recalling how he's seen the outgoing Vice President working devotedly in all the roles that he took throughout his years in politics. The Prime Minister hailed the highly productive 5-year term of M Venkaiah Naidu as Vice President of India and Rajya Sabha Chairman, saying the outgoing chairman worked on the principle that let the government propose, let the opposition oppose, and let the House dispose. Adding that his witty one-liners were revered and never countered, the Prime Minister mentioned how the chairman encouraged dialogue and his legacy will continue to guide his successors. Leader of opposition in the Rajya Sabha, Mallikarjun Kharge, said that while their ideologies may differ, M Venkaiah Naidu carried out his responsibilities even under immense pressure. During the farewell, Chairman Naidu also turned emotional when Trinamool Congress MP Derek O'Brien narrated an incident from the Vice President's early life. M Venkaiah Naidu demits office on the 10th of August. His successor, Jagdeep Dhankhar, will take the office on the 11th of August. In Perspective today, we take a look back at M Venkaiah Naidu's 5-year term as Vice President and Rajya Sabha Chairman and the legacy that he leaves behind. Joining me is a panel of senior journalists who've known the outgoing president for decades in active politics and also as the Vice President of the country. So let me first introduce them to you. With me in the studio is Mr. K.V. Prasad. Thank you for your time, sir. Welcome to Sansad TV. And joining us virtually are two special guests, Mr. K. Badrinath, senior journalist, and Mr. Ganpati Subramanian, also a senior journalist. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on this edition of Perspective. Mr. Badrinath, let me begin the program today with you. Your thoughts on how do you look back at M Venkaiah Naidu's term as he is set to demit office in 2 days from now? Okay, I'll get back to him in just a while, but Mr. Prasad, let me begin then by asking you, how do you look back at M Venkaiah Naidu's term now as he's set to demit office as the 13th Vice President of the country?
Well, yes, it has been a good journey and a long journey. And I said, as it has been recounted through the day and on several occasions, I think he came to the office of Vice President, and more importantly, as the ex-officio chairman of Rajya Sabha, with a tremendous understanding of the way the House functions. Having been there personally for 19 years, almost 2 decades, on both sides of the aisle. That's most important because he was both in the opposition. So that gives you a very, very wide perspective of the way things are and how it's required. And I think some of it he did sum up in the farewell speech he gave maybe an hour ago, where he brought that in a very succinct manner as to the way the Rajya Sabha and the houses should function itself. Members should conduct and a message for everybody across, both the government and the parties in the opposition, that how difficult a job was it for him to go through it. That I think is very significant. And just an aside, while he was referred to be the only member from the House to have adorned the chair of chairmanship, there is another small nugget, if I would say so. I think he had the rare distinction of actually presiding over the House on the very day he took oath, which was, if you remove the tenure of Dr. Radhakrishnan, subsequent chairpersons, the Houses were either adjourned, they were not in session, or were in a break. So that itself shows that he had the unique advantage of starting from day one.
Absolutely, and that is something that has been hailed as well. The last 5 years have been immensely productive, Mr. Badrinath. If we look at, you've known him personally as well. You've covered parliamentary proceedings, and before that, because he served in the Union Ministry as a senior cabinet minister before becoming the 13th Vice President. So overall, the kind of experience that he brought with him, and as the ex-officio chairman of Rajya Sabha, what do you think was his biggest strength that helped him, successfully run the House for 5 long years, and a productive one as well?
Two things which stand out in his favor are, one is that he has been fair and very objective in running the House. Normally, when you are aware that he has been the president of Bharatiya Janata Party, And even after having been wedded to a strong dominant ideology, he still was very just to all sides of the opposition as well as the treasury benches. Second part is he encouraged a lot of youngsters to contribute meaningfully to the discussion in the house. Third interesting aspect of his activity was he tried to keep a lot of liveliness in the house with his one liners, with his humor, with his versatile quotes, with his knowledge of public governance, and the kind of experience he brought to the house. Second issue is you talked about the productivity. The productivity part that you talked about, there was a recent report in one of the newspapers which said that from the day he took over, there were a lot of disruptions because the opposition had a upper hand and the ruling alliance had, they were found wanting for numbers. And so passage of bills was it was a very big difficult situation for the ruling alliance. Second part is that there were a lot of the number of working hours there was very very limited. But from there on, he worked very hard as a presiding officer of the house to make things work for all sides of the all stakeholders in the house as well as outside, because of which there's a lot of work that has been put in and lot of outcomes that you can think of. I saw that there was some 234 bills or something which were passed in the Rajya Sabha during his tenure, and this means a lot in a divided house where normally the presiding officer is seen as being on the side of the treasury benches. He is seen more as a just guy, who is a man who is with a lot of principles, and he's a guy who is supposed to be bringing in a lot of experience as a cabinet minister, as a person with a lot of understanding of public governance as well to the house.
Certainly, and that is why, despite the disruptions and the uproar that took place during the last 5 years, the overall productivity under his chairmanship was around 70%. And given the uproar that we've already seen, the highs and the lows over the last 5 years, this is quite a satisfactory number. Mr. Subramaniam, let me come to you for your perspective. Mr. Naidu also, during his chairmanship, brought about certain changes in the manner the House functions and also in the manner the committees function, so that their efficiency, their productivity is also increased apart from the normal proceedings of the House. If you could, cite some significant changes that you think Mr. Naidu brought about and which has particularly been very, very effective in functioning of the Rajya Sabha?
Venkaiah ji is a very emotional person, but whenever he walked into the Rajya Sabha and sat in the chair, he kept his emotions aside and focused on the rules in spirit and in letter also. He used to tell each and every member how to follow the rules, and whether it is a cabinet minister or a very senior MP, Venkaiah ji never hesitated to tell somebody, this is wrong, you correct yourself. That was his brilliance and confidence, and that was also because of his stature. And why I am telling you Venkaiah ji is such an emotional person is, when he was selected as the ruling party's nominee for the vice president's post, he felt very emotional. You know why? Because he said, my party is like my mother. Now I have to keep all the decorum, maintain it, and I cannot even visit my party office. And you yourself mentioned about the incident that was mentioned by Derek O'Brien in Rajya Sabha today, how Venkaiah ji lost his mother very early in his childhood. And he considered the BJP, his party, to be his mother. And that is why he was very emotional when he had to distance himself from the party and conduct the Rajya Sabha. But at the same time, he was determined to do it very well, and he did it excellently. As you mentioned, he told all the members to attend the committee meetings, which was not expected or seen, experienced earlier. He told them the committee meetings usually happen between two sessions of parliament. So when the new session begins, he would tell people, for so and so committee, only very few people attended. Another committee, only half the members. He used to tell them, please go and attend your committee meetings. And he also explained the numbers to people. See, this is not the way to function. So therefore, they also understood and they became very serious. Follow all the rules, follow the decorum, follow the principles, and attend all the meetings and make the entire house productive. Apart from all this, he also encouraged everybody to speak in their own mother tongue. People who did not know Hindi or people who did not know English, who could not speak very well in these languages, they were told, you speak in your own mother tongue, I will make all the arrangements. So therefore, he made sure that he looked after every section of the upper house and made sure that the performance was much better than all previous records.
Certainly. So he was like a guardian of sorts, Mr. Prasad. And particularly this highlight that Mr. Subramanian spoke about is to promote linguistic diversity within the House, to ensure that members who came from different states did not feel uncomfortable while expressing their views, while taking part in important discussions. How has that changed in the manner, new members, especially coming in from far-flung states of our country, are actively now participating in important debates and the kind of productivity as well of the House?
Yeah, I think the basic concept behind it, some of which he did articulate time and again, was a mother tongue is like your natural eyesight. So you tend to, and there's a natural flow when you speak in your language you're very comfortable with. Your thoughts come in a very smooth and clear fashion. Your diction is good, and you're able to express yourself very clearly, irrespective of the fact that others may not understand because you're not speaking the language everybody follows. So there, I think that greatest thing was to strengthen the available infrastructure by providing the required infrastructure in terms of translations required. And there is already, the rule was already there. It is the matter of implementation. So that was important, and that, as I said, helped members to overcome the hesitancy if they were to participate in a debate, because they may not be very adept at using all the words in a language which they are not very familiar with or are less familiar with. So that was one reason. And that's why, and also encouraging more participation from newer members, because that one, you break their hesitancy. And if there is anything, you lose that big stage fright, if at all there was one. So all these are, and that, as I said in the beginning, he's seen them from very close as a member of the House for such a long time. So he's experienced that and brought that to the office. And I think that was mentioned. And I think this morning one member mentioned a significant aspect, which a change of very nominal change by dropping the word "I beg to lay" on the table of the House, because
some of these colonial terms that were being used.
Or I think another member mentioned the fact that the notices, when they had to sign and send to the Secretary General, they were signed "yours faithfully," and that member said, I think Mr. Siva has mentioned of that this morning. So he suggested we should use "sincerely" instead, and that has been the norm. So, the little things which may not come to public notice as
but
such.
But that have made significant
because
impact.
Mr. Siva made this point that it actually restored the prestige of the decorum of the House and the members, esteem of the members. So I think those are little things which would go a long way to kind of bring out. And I think committee meetings, Mr. Subramanian spoke in detail, so I would not like to get into it.
So we've seen, a significant change when it comes to committee meetings and the participation as well. Mr. Badrinath, at the same time, we've spoken about productivity, we've spoken about these little changes, but significant ones that Mr. Naidu brought about during his chairmanship. But he also did face a number of challenges. So, for example, when the bill of Jammu and Kashmir bifurcation was passed and Article 370 was abrogated, also in the form of this unprecedented COVID pandemic. How do you see him having sailed through all of these challenges very, very effectively?
Well, biggest challenge Mr. Naidu faced was one, though it is not his responsibility to get the government business through, or see that he cites or be seen as supporting the opposition cause of disruptions. He brought in a fine balance between the two sides. At the same time, he overcome a lot of challenges because of his personal rapport with a lot of members who have been his juniors, who have been his contemporaries, who have been his, some of them have been his, even seniors. Maybe a few, very few of them would have been his seniors. So the way that the having, personal rapport with members across the party spectrum, irrespective of ideologies, as well as even the worst of his ideological opponents or his former ideological opponents, like the leftists or the radical minded or the casteist organization, whatever it is. I mean, the kind of the grace and that he brought to the chair itself was a biggest balancing factor in running the house in a big way. Second part to the entire challenge facing was also that he had a lot of informal meetings with a lot of MPs, irrespective of they were called no agenda meetings, which may not have been in the logbooks of the parliament because many of them he would have met personally at home and tried to convince why things have to come on to a discussion table. If you recall, many a time he had used this word, let the government propose, let the opposition dispose, let us, do things in the right balanced manner. So what we were told is that, the performance part is directly linked to the kind of, wisdom and humor that he brought to the chat.
Absolutely. So his
Second is, I have
witty
noticed, because I've
one-liners
seen,
are too many to list. But one important thing, and which has a larger message as well, that Mr. Swaminathan, I'll come to you, that, he spoke about how the government and the opposition must talk it out or walk it out. But what we are witnessing in today's scenario is a situation where it's a situation of break it out. So that is something which, it was an efficient one-liner from him, but which had a significant message referring to the kind of disruptions and the washout that session after session is witnessing, and which is impacting productivity of Parliament. That is something that he wanted as a farewell message, a productive monsoon session. That could not happen. But going forth, he, of course, has expressed hope that this is something that must be corrected.
oh yes.
Yeah, of course, Venkaiah ji is a scholar. He used to read a lot and he used to write columns in newspapers. So he used to research about each and every subject. And whenever any member or anybody spoke, he always knew the background of the member. He used to say, so-and-so used to be the assembly speaker in so-and-so state. So-and-so was a member in the government. He used to remember everything. Such a strong memory he had. I remember once I went to meet him when former Tamil Nadu Chief Minister Jayalalitha ji had passed away. And my God, he recollected events which had happened so many years ago, and his memory was so sharp, he recollected everything precisely. So that kind of a person, he was almost like a teacher in the Rajya Sabha, telling his students how to conduct themselves and how to go along with the proceedings of the house and make it very productive. And he always insisted, people have sent us here to look after their responsibilities, their aspirations, and their expectations. So we should work for that. Nation first was what he also mentioned today in his farewell speech in Parliament House, where all the members of Parliament were present. He said, political differences should be set aside. The country should come first. We should look after the national interest, and then only everything else should be considered. So that kind of a person, he was always, instead of going into any kind of a political kind of thinking or thought process, he used to always say, first, interest of the country. In the interest of the country, you discuss this. These are important matters for the people of the country. So therefore, the government should look after these things, consider these things. Many a demand from the opposition, Venkaiah ji used to recommend the concerned minister should take note and take action. So that is the kind of track record that he has set.
Absolutely,
It's
and that
going to
is
be
what
difficult
earned
for
him the
anybody to
respect
match in the next
of
5 years.
members across party lines. Mr. Prasad, time is running out. I'll take one last comment from you very quickly, because much has been spoken about the witty one-liners with significant messaging from Mr. M Venkaiah Naidu. One such famous one-liner from Naidu that you remember, and that will perhaps be remembered for a long time, each time Parliament proceedings and effective functioning is spoken
I
over.
think there are many, in fact. So it's very difficult to pinpoint any in particular, but there have been several that have been mentioned over the day. But I have one more to add to it. I think those one-liners were a very, very good way of remembering it. You know, people, if you give a very long, winding lecture, it may get lost in transition. But that single line sticks to you and you remember it. For instance, today also he mentioned several times, you know, you expose, and it's an old parliamentary saying that the opposition has to expose, oppose, and depose. So he said, opposition, government proposes, opposition. So
and how the opposition must should have its say, but
yeah, that's again,
ultimately the government should have its say.
It's a very old saying that the opposition will have its say and the government will have its way. So I think he used it as a very, very way so that people will remember it, and the message was sent home. You see.
Absolutely, and that is something that we are all discussing today. He is presided over a very, very successful 5-year term as Vice President and Rajya Sabha Chairman, and today it's a rich legacy that he leaves behind. It's going to be, of course, something that his successor will have to match up to. But nevertheless, we wish Mr. Naidu all the very, very best for his future endeavors. And with that, I'll have to wind up the program as well. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on this edition of Perspective and sharing your thoughts, your views about the memories and the significant changes that Mr. M Venkaiah Naidu brought about in the way Rajya Sabha functions during his chairmanship over the last 5 years. So that's it from us on this edition of Perspective. Thank you to you viewers as well for your time. See you again same time tomorrow now. Thanks once again.